How does one of the wealthiest men who ever lived become a beggar? How can we learn from his mistakes? What were his successes and failures? We'll talk about it in this video. Welcome to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. By doing so, you'll get inspired by some of the greatest men in history. In the Bible, Solomon is considered the wisest man that has ever lived. He was a king of Israel around 970 BC. His wealth was literally unimaginable for those times. According to historians, Solomon was the richest person for his time with an estimated net worth of over 400 billion. And he ruled over a vast empire that stretched from Egypt to Lebanon and parts of Arabia. So how did he lose everything? First of all, let's look at what made him so rich. Number 1. God blessed him with riches. When God decided to give Solomon anything he wished for, Solomon asked for wisdom. And since God saw that he had asked for wisdom rather than for wealth or long life, he gave him even more than he had asked for, including great riches. To put it into perspective, there was no bank account or credit card in those times, but yet he was richer than many of the billionaires we know today. This teaches us that when we are grateful and humble enough to ask God for help, He will give us whatever we want. However, we need to remember that just because something is easy doesn't mean it's right. As it is written in the Bible, do not love money, resist the temptation to take shortcuts. Number 2, he used his wisdom to grow his wealth. The Bible says that Solomon became famous throughout the world for his wisdom. Kings and common folk would come to him from all over the world to hear his judgment and advice. And when someone heard that Solomon was wise, they would come to him with their problems and lawsuits. If he was a judge, he would listen carefully to both sides before making a decision. And if he was a counselor, he would tell them exactly what to do and say. One day, a queen from a faraway land visited Solomon, and she challenged him to solve a difficult riddle. The prize for guessing correctly would be half of his kingdom. But instead of worrying, Solomon remained calm and confidently accepted her challenge. After hearing the queen's riddle, he went home to think about it. He thought and prayed very hard for 7 days, finally figuring out the answer. He sent for the queen and told her the answer. Impressed, she gave him half of her kingdom and they became friends. This story tells us that although Solomon was rich and powerful, he never forgot to use his mind, and he was always willing to take risks for greater rewards. Number 3, he expanded the borders of his kingdom. Under his reign, Israel reached its greatest territorial extent. As a young man, Solomon assembled a massive military force. With this army, he conquered neighboring nations and extended Israel's borders from the Euphrates River in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. He also fought against the Hittites and the Jebusites, 2 powerful Canaanite tribes who had been resisting Israel's rule. And after defeating them, he forced them to pay tribute to Israel, which brought even more wealth into the kingdom. In addition to expanding Israel's borders, Solomon also built strong alliances with other nations. For example, he married the daughter of Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, in order to cement a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. He also formed an alliance with the king of Tyre, another powerful city-state in the region. Through these alliances, Solomon was able to secure his kingdom's borders and protect it from outside threats. But this constant need for power led to his downfall. And now let's discuss his biggest mistake. Number 1, he pleased himself rather than pleasing God. Even though Solomon was a devout believer in Yahweh, the God of Israel, he strayed from his faith and worshipped other gods. He began to indulge in luxury and pleasure, forsaking his duties to God. And despite having been raised in a godly household, Solomon fell in love with a foreign woman. He married her and built her a magnificent palace, allowing her to practice her religion freely. But soon he started worshiping strange gods, burning incense to them, offering sacrifices and celebrating their festivals. This infuriated God, who warned Solomon that he would be punished for abandoning the covenant. God promised him that he would tear the kingdom away from his descendants and give it to a new ruler. Despite this warning, Solomon continued to worship false gods until God fulfilled his threat. Number 2, he took many wives. As we all know, Solomon had many wives and concubines, and he loved them dearly. However, God had warned him not to marry women who worshipped other gods. Unfortunately, Solomon didn't listen to God's advice and married 700 beautiful women from other nations. These women may have seemed harmless, but they were actually troublemakers. They constantly nagged Solomon to allow them to worship their gods, and eventually he gave in and let them build high places and burn incense to their gods. This caused the people of Israel to sin and worship false gods, and as a result, God was very angry with Solomon. Number 3, he expanded too much. Although expanding the borders of Israel brought him wealth and fame, it also caused him to stray from God. It made him arrogant and proud. And once he even said that only he knew how to keep his kingdom safe. He believed that he didn't need God's help anymore. And this attitude is what led to the division of the kingdom. So what are the lessons we can learn from Solomon's life? We can see that greed can lead to destruction. No matter how rich or powerful you are, if you're not careful, you can lose everything. Solomon was so obsessed with acquiring more and more wealth that he neglected his duties to God and his people. This greed ultimately led to the downfall of his dynasty and the destruction of his kingdom. He didn't stop to appreciate what he had achieved and instead always wanted more. He should have known that enough is enough, but he didn't. Instead, he expanded too much, which led to his demise. From his story, we can see that worldly pleasures can corrupt the best of us. Solomon was considered the wisest man who ever lived, but even he was tempted by the luxuries and pleasures of this world. He allowed himself to be corrupted by the riches and fame, and this ultimately led to his downfall. His story also teaches us that we should always remember our roots. Solomon was born into a poor family, but he became the richest man who ever lived. Yet he forgot where he came from and became arrogant and proud. This attitude is what led to the division of the kingdom. Finally, his story teaches us to listen to our elders. Solomon's father, King David, had given him many pieces of advice on how to rule over Israel. But Solomon didn't listen and did things his own way, which led to the downfall of his dynasty. Now let's look at some of his accomplishments. Number 1, building the first temple in Jerusalem. Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem, which became the center of worship for Jews around the world. It was a magnificent building made of cedar wood and gold, and it was considered a symbol of God's presence among his people. Number 2, writing the book of Proverbs. Proverbs is a collection of wise sayings and teachings that offer guidance on how to live a good and righteous life. It is one of the most popular books in the Bible, and it has been translated into many different languages. Number 3, creating a stable and prosperous kingdom. Solomon's reign was a time of peace and prosperity for Israel. He was able to maintain law and order throughout his kingdom, and he oversaw a period of economic growth and cultural flourishing. If you enjoyed this video, check out other videos about great men. We highly recommend the video about Ataturk, the founder of modern Turkey. You'll learn about his rise to power, his accomplishments, and how he shaped the country's future.